Unmute myself.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 5:13. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties setting up, I guess. But Hugh, are we going to have, are you going to be able to do the roll call, or do you want me to do that to establish a quorum?
I can do roll call, absolutely. I told you how to work the mic, and I worked the mic wrong. Yes, I can do roll call. Chairman Scott,
Here.
Vice Chair Michelle Dempsey,
Here.
Nancy Bertels,
Here.
Aaron Malone. Here. Mic's on and off as you respond. Perfect. Dorothy Dennison,
Here.
Eric Palin. I believe Mr. Palin will be calling in. Susan Hillman,
Here.
Camilla Potts,
Here.
and Sally
Pollen.
Pollen.
Here.
Wonderful. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We have an agenda here. Would someone be willing to make a motion to accept the agenda? right, we have a motion. There you go. Try one more time for the folks at home.
Motion to accept the agenda, Michelle Dempsey.
All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. We have Aaron Malone as the second. All right. We have a flag. Aaron, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you very much for being here, everyone. Today's meeting will be mostly informational. We'll have a few decisions to make. I want to make sure everybody understands that the audio goes through the mics. So for online, make sure you speak clearly into the microphone. And like I said, mics off and on, turn them off when you're not speaking into them. Other than that, this is new to a lot of us, so it's kind of a learning curve. I'm sure we'll be able to get through it, and we have Hugh and the staff here to be our guide rails. But we do want to start with the ordinance that establishes this group. And give me 1 second here. The general procedures, section 4 and 5 that apply to us. Each board, commission, or committee created by the assembly shall be governed by this chapter unless otherwise provided by ordinance. For purpose of this chapter, the term board, commission, and committee have identical meanings. Temporary committees and committees formed by a special purpose or limited duration by ordinance or otherwise shall be subject to the term of service provisions to this chapter. Such temporary committees shall not terminate until the duty assigned to them is accomplished and the assembly receives a final report or upon dilution of the assembly. Boards and committees may create their own subcommittees as needed, and all committees and boards, whether temporary or not, shall comply with the relevant provisions of the code and shall abide by the rules and procedures as outlined in the most current, I'll emphasize that, the most current edition of Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised. And so I would say for our committee members, if you're not familiar with that, maybe bone up on that a little bit. There's some user-friendly guides you could go through, but for the most part, just kind of follow the process and we'll get through it. Any questions or discussion about that as far as the formation and generally of the boards? And we'll get to the ordinance that forms this board, ordinance 24-039, whereas the borough has maintained a library's collection and development policy, including a library challenge materials policy for many years, and whereas recently a group of patrons brought forward challenges for several books before a review committee, and whereas at a recent review committee meeting, frustrations boiled over, and the borough mayor suspended the library challenge materials policy, and whereas the Matsu Board School District has already created a model for a Library Citizens Advisory Committee, and whereas the Citizens Advisory Committee will allow library staff to remain focused on providing services to their respective communities while incorporating citizens in the review process, providing a better understanding of the attitudes and opinions held in the community. Whereas a Citizens Advisory Committee will serve in a strictly advisory capacity and will not act as a policy-making or decision-making body. And whereas the Assembly determines it prudent to establish a Citizens Advisory Committee, be it enacted, Section 1, classification, this is a non-code ordinance. Section 2, creation of a committee, says a committee to be called the Library Citizens Action Committee, Advisory Committee is hereby established. The committee shall consist of a chairperson, a vice chairperson, 5 additional committee members, and 2 alternate members who are citizens of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough. The alternate members may attend and participate at all meetings and shall be provided all materials. If one member of the committee is not present, alternate one may vote, and in the event of 2 or more members of the committee are absent, both alternates may vote. The provisions of the Matsu Code code that we just read, 4.05071, do not apply to the committee. The mayor shall appoint the chairperson, vice chairperson, and additional committee members and alternate members subject to assembly confirmation. Voting members' representation from as many assembly districts as is feasible shall be sought on the committee, but all committee members shall be appointed for their expertise and knowledge of the community and shall represent the entire borough. Limitations and powers and duties of the committee include: the committee shall have an advisory function only and shall not otherwise act individually or collectively as a borough agent or entity. Committee meetings are open to the public and audience participation will be limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Committee meetings shall be held at least quarterly, but may be held on a monthly basis as decided by the committee members or upon the call of the chair. The committee shall perform a review of challenged library materials according to a scoring card provided by the community development director. The committee members are not entitled to compensation or reimbursement, and 4 committee members constitutes a quorum of the committee. The staff of the committee, the manager shall assign up to 3 staff members to attend committee meetings, take minutes of the meetings, work with the borough clerk to properly notice the meeting, distribute committee materials during the meeting, and handle scoring cards from the committee members pursuant to Section 6. Borough clerk shall obtain the schedule of meetings and ensure advertising the meeting of the committee. Staff are not a voting member of the committee. Section 6, report and recommendation. The committee shall deliver scoring cards completed during a public meeting and a recommendation made by motion or resolution to the Recreation and Library Services Manager after the close of that meeting. Scoring cards, minutes of motions, resolutions are public records. Section 7, library material decisions. The Community Development Director shall consider the recommendations of the committee, but shall retain all final decision-making authority for the challenged library materials. Section 8, effective date of expiration. This ordinance shall take effect upon adoption. This ordinance and the committee will expire June 30th, 2027. Any questions, discussions about anything in the ordinance or the establishment of the committee? All right. Code of Ethics. If you have in your notes, chapter 2.71 of the Code of Ethics. We're not going to go through all of this, but you can read through in your time. Most of this won't apply to our circumstance, but we do want to be mostly concerned with how we comport ourselves as committee members when dealing with the public or dealing with each other respectfully. And try to keep your poker face about you. Try to keep your words as non-personal or threatening as possible, and just keep it to the content of the discussion or the books that we're reviewing. Pretty much all the ethics issues that apply to every committee and board apply to us. Prohibited acts. Obviously, we're not official agents of the borough, so acting as such would be unethical. And that's about it. Any questions, or if you read through, have any questions on the ethical codes, I'm sure we'll address them as needed. All right. And for the process, any questions, conversations, discussion concerning ethics? All right. The library's collection development policy. The purpose of the policy, this policy will inform and educate library staff, patrons, borough administrators, and public officials about the environment in which the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Libraries operate. Their mission, the section and weeding criteria used, how collections reconsiderations are handled, and the priorities of the selection development. Borough library administrators will review the policy every 5 years. Community description entails The Matanuska-Susitna Borough lies in the heart of South Central Alaska, encompassing more than 24,000 square miles of rolling lowland, mountains, rivers, lakes, streams. The borough includes portions of the Alaska Range, northwest Chugach Mountains, and southeast to the entire Talkeetna and Clearwater ranges in the interior. Since incorporation in 1964, the borough's population has climbed steadily, and the 2020 census figures indicate that 107,881 people reside within the borough. The region is expected to reach 130,000 by 2027. But the Matanuska Borough provides library facilities and services in the following areas outside the incorporated cities of Palmer and Wasilla, including Big Lake, Sutton, Talkeetna, Trapper Creek, and Willow. The Alaskan ideal of independence is embodied in each of these communities, and therefore each facility maintains a unique identity. Number 3, the mission statement and library goals as stated. The Matanuska Borough Libraries support educational, civic, and cultural activities of their communities, as well as the intellectual, creative, and inspirational endeavors of the individual. In support of our mission, the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Libraries strive to ensure our collections are focusing on the requests and needs of our communities. Specifically, we have recognized these areas of primary consideration in order of priority. Firstly, popular material centers. Each library houses up-to-date material on a variety of formats to meet the recreational, educational, and remote lifestyle needs and wants of our community members. These collections include fiction, nonfiction, and Alaskana collected for adults, juveniles, and young adults. References and community resource centers. Each library maintains a basic reference collection. We house local, borough, state publications for public review, as well as online access to state, federal, and local forums. Phone reference in our website is available to help meet the needs of people who cannot visit our local library. Interlibrary loans provide our patrons with material not found within our network. Preschoolers' doorway to learning include Matanuska. The MSB libraries support parents with early literacy with a collection that includes a selection of books, audio, and visual material. Support for K through 12 education includes the library's work in partnership with local schools and school curriculum to support students in their academic endeavors. Non-print materials, the libraries acquire non-print items for a variety of purposes, and items are selected according to the library's mission, including audio and visual recordings. Access to electronic resources to fulfill its mission of providing public access to information, resources, and services to provide opportunities for lifelong learning through self-education. The Matanuska-Susitna Borough Public Libraries offer free internet access through Wi-Fi and public access computers at all facilities. Access to multiple databases are available from our website. Talks about interlibrary loans, materials section guide. The purpose of the library's materials section guidance is to provide MSB library staff members an informed library board, Library Citizens Advisory Committee, and the public about the principles upon which selections are based. The primary objective of library materials section in MSB libraries is to collect material of current interest and significance, as well as those of permanent value. Responsibilities for material selection lies with the librarian of each borough library. Items are chosen as follows: input from other staff members, public recommendations, patron requests, and statistics showing areas of high use and interest. The following general criteria are used when selecting library material: present and potential relevance to community needs. So suitability of subject, style and reading level for the intended audience, suitability of format, importance as a document of the times, reputation and or significance of author, publisher, or producer, positive review in one or more appropriate professional journals, positive critics, patron and or staff member reviews, relationships to existing materials in the collection, including without limits of budget for materials not available within or limited accessibility from other lending sources, insufficient materials available on the same subject, author or illustrator is local, enhances a specific collection within the library's literacy and artistic merit, accuracy of content, popularity with library patrons. Any questions so far? All right. Specific selection guidance by collection, adult collection, to provide local communities information on subjects of topical as well as continuing interest, different points of view on all topics, historically significant points of view, material that provides instruction and material for entertainment and recreation, media collections to provide our community with topical, current, and popular information by providing access to material in a non-print format such as DVD, audio, CDs, and other new formats. Youth collections to provide material for youth 15 and under in a variety of formats to meet recreational and informational interests as well as to support their formal educational curriculum. Young adult collections to provide material for young adults ages 16 and over in a variety of formats to meet the recreational and informational interests as well as to support their formal educational curriculum. A reference collection to provide local communities with basic reference collections comprised of electronic resources and print material. Libraries may add copies of items of local history and use nonfiction material and high-use non-fictional material to the reference collection to ensure availability to the public. Alaskana collections to provide communities with items of local interest or history which reflect the interests and relevance of each community. Local appeal or authors and demand will dictate the selection coverage in this collection. Periodical collections to supplement and complement the materials in the adult and juvenile selections with periodical literature. This collection is intended to be more current and more frequently updated than the general collections. The periodical collections comprise subscriptions to electronic magazine databases and print issues. Gifts, donations, and memorials. The Matsu Borough Libraries are authorized to accept unconditional gifts and donations of materials to their libraries. Gifts with conditions or stipulations may require approval by the Borough Administration following a recommendation from the Recreation and Library Services Manager. The selection criteria for gifts and donations of materials are the same as for the general collections. Collection evaluation and maintenance. Collection maintenance is a continuous process and reflects the goals and objectives of the Matanuska-Susitna Borough Libraries and have updated and actively circulated collections. Systematic weeding is done in each borough library to keep their collections responsive to patrons' needs and desires, to ensure the collection's usefulness to its respective community, and to make room for new material. The library automation system provides the libraries with statistics to help weed items no longer actively circulating. Materials no longer meeting the guidance for material selection may be weeded. In addition, borough libraries use the criteria outlined in the CREW or continuous review evaluation and weeding method of weeding. Items that are weeded include topics and or formats no longer a priority to the collection, books and material of poor condition, books and material of poor appearance, unused material. Use of the acronym MUSTY provides further weeding criteria, misleading or factually inaccurate, ugly, worn out beyond mending or rebinding, superseded by a new edition or better source, trivial, of no discernible or literary or scientific merit, irrelevant to the needs of the interests of our community. Elsewhere, the material may be easily borrowed from another source. Even where materials may be weeded from the collection, interlibrary loans ensures the availability of items to our patrons that may not be available locally. Records kept on items requested and received also help libraries identify areas they may want to weed in or collect in. Conclusion. Matanuska-Susitna Borough Library staff is responsible for the collection of library material and delegates to such staff the authority to purchase those materials that are considered essential, useful, and within the scope of this policy. All right. Any questions on that? Any discussion? That's just to kind of lay out the blueprint of the policies, the procedures that kind of get us to this point. There's a lot of layers to this, obviously. What I don't have in front of me is the process of book review, books that are contended and brought before us. I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to, if there's no other questions or discussion, turn it over. Hugh, would you like to keep the ball rolling for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jillian Morrissey, who's the Community Development Director, was unable to attend tonight's meeting, but I do have a report from her that I would like to read into the record. Thank you for the time to provide a brief report to this body tonight. The Library Citizens Advisory Committee will be referred to as LCAC for the rest of this report. Community development staff is here to support the advent and function of the LCAC. My senior staff member, Hugh Leslie, will provide in-person support at the meetings, and his assistant, Sarah Thomas, will provide additional support. My staff will provide the following functions for the committee: email communication to the LCAC members with the meeting packet and reminder of the date and time of upcoming meetings and any other important required information. Note, it is important that all LCAC members monitor email, as this is the most efficient way to communicate with all the members. 2, ensure a quorum for upcoming meetings via email. 3, communication with the Borough Clerk's office to notice the public meetings and maintain an accurate contact list for LCAC members. Securing the room and IT support needed for the public meeting of the LCAC. Provide meeting minutes for the record. Staff reports on the library materials that the LCAC chooses to review. Provide copies of the library materials to review. Copies of any information that support the function of the committee, like you were given tonight, including the ordinance, policy, code of ethics, etc. Include copies for the public and any other administrative function that comes to us as needed and will be organized with the chair and vice chair of the LCAC. Additionally, this evening, borough attorneys are here to provide information to the LCAC tonight as we progress through this first meeting. The Community Development Department worked with the borough attorneys on 2 questions that came up from our first meeting with the chair and vice chair last month, and I wanted to provide space in this meeting for those questions to be answered publicly. The first question was asked about the length of time for public testimony at LCAC meetings. The ordinance is clear that each individual is allowed 2 minutes. The ordinance did not specify the amount of time for collective public testimony. In speaking with the attorney, there is no public testimony time, meaning that if there are 5 people or 500 people, they will each be allowed their 2 minutes, and the chair cannot restrict or limit the number of speakers. Additional LCAC meetings may need to be scheduled to accommodate public testimony, and we will work with the chair and the clerk's office to address this need if arises. Secondly, there was a question about social media use by members of the LCAC, specifically regarding comments and commentary about the work of the LCAC. I will let the borough attorney speak to the committee directly about this topic after this report is done. Thank you for your service to this committee, and please do not hesitate to reach out to Mr. Leslie or Ms. Thomas with any questions. A copy of that will be provided to you as well. Second thing on that under staff reports is my report. One of the things that we passed out to you as well was the Open Meetings Act information as well, and that includes the Roberts Rules of Order. We ask that you familiarize yourself with that. It makes the meetings go a little smoother and follows an approved process that the borough follows. Further down in your agenda, You have the list of 3 books that are submitted for reconsideration. Should the board choose to review any or all of those books, I have copies here available for all of the members. And then we'll talk more later on about scorecards and that kind of thing available to the members. And the 2 borough attorneys behind me can also be utilized for information and questions from the board.
All right, thank you. Would you like to, I'm sorry, your name, I don't want to hash it. Thank you.
For those of you that don't know, I'm Nick Sparopoulos. I'm the borough attorney here at the Mat-Su Borough. So I wanted to come, you got the director's report. I just kind of wanted to follow up a little bit on her report because it's better to hear it from me than from the community development director about social media use. Even though it wasn't on the agenda in your list of materials, we did provide you a copy of the Open Meetings Act. Earlier this month, actually in June, the borough clerk and I gave a presentation to all boards and commissions on Open Meetings Act and parliamentary procedure. It was recorded. It's available. You can talk to the clerk's office. I'm not exactly sure where it is, but I know it was recorded. So if you could take a look at that, it would give you a great primer on both the Open Meetings Act and some parliamentary procedure things, such as you don't really need to ask for a second if you don't want to, and if it's unanimous consent, you don't have to actually take a vote. You can just say unanimous consent. Shortcuts like that to kind of help along. I did want to specifically address social media use because it was brought up beforehand. Under the Open Meetings Act, no more than 3 of you can communicate outside of a publicly advertised meeting about anything that this board might consider. So it's a little bit maybe inconvenient, but the goal, and you'll hear me say this in the training if you go watch the training, the goal is to make sure that the public's business for boards and commissions are done in full view of the public. That there's no, behind the scenes discussions and everything's kind of, decided ahead of time and then you come forward and you vote. The social media use thing, the rules apply. You can pretend social media is as if you're all standing in the room. And when you like somebody, you just look across the room at them and you give them the thumbs up. And the question legally is, could you take a vote that way? And the answer is, of course you could, right? If the chair of this meeting looked at everybody and said, what's your vote? And a couple of you went like this and a couple of you went like this, everybody in the room would know how you voted. So when you're on social media, just if there are other board members involved, be careful what you comment on, be careful what you post on. If you really want to be very kind of conservative about the entire thing, don't comment or post about anything involving the work of this committee. That's probably the most salient legal advice I could give you. I know everybody wants to participate. We're a small community. At the end of the day, everybody's deeply involved. For those of you who were here and remember, for former city council members at the city of Wasilla, I'm sorry, city of Palmer, sorry, Wasilla. City of Palmer got in trouble for being in a Facebook group where that was not, and commenting and communicating when it was A, not an open group, and B, not advertised. And so advertisement and participating and interacting here at the meeting is something that we are going to, every day, all day, recommend that you do. Again, take a look at that video. If you have specific questions, you could always, through the staff to the board, ask us. If you want us to attend a meeting, we can certainly do that. If you're worried you might have oopsed or done something and you're worried about an Open Meetings Act thing, you can call me direct, you can call my office direct, call the clerk's office direct, and we'll help work through it. There are remedies, there are ways to cure, to kind of redo things, to bring things out into the open if something inadvertently happens. Again, a lot of this is covered in that training, so.
If I could clarify real quick, the original question had more to do with not so much the use of Open Meetings Act and engaging with each other online, but similar to the situation that came up with some of the state representatives blocking someone or dealing with harassing or treatment like that online. How, obviously how to handle some of that. I understand what you're saying. Those are all
Yep.
helpful tips.
Yep.
But as far as blocking someone or harassing things, what would you recommend in terms of the public attacking members publicly and online or through social media?
Yeah, so So
Obviously,
is-
not responding is a good idea.
Well,
but-
that's, A, that's a good idea. B, when you are a public official, the advice that's going to be the kind of, again, the conservative legal advice that you're going to start to see around this country everywhere is going to be that public officials are going to be recommended to have an official page and a personal page.
But we wouldn't necessarily on this board be recommended to have an official page, is what I was told.
No, you wouldn't
Yeah,
be, because
So those things wouldn't necessarily apply as the,
they may not.
Okay.
You always run a risk if you block
Sure.
or delete comments. You
Sure.
always run a risk. But what I will tell you is the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case called Linkey versus Freed this past June, and there's a two-part test. One, you have to have authority to speak on behalf of the government, and two, you must purport to exercise that authority. The problem with that test is that authority can come from usage, practice, custom. So somebody could just, for years, just say, well, I'm speaking on behalf of the borough. And then it can grow into usage, practice, or custom. We don't know exactly how that rule is gonna, how that rule is gonna manifest itself. If you start to have individual problems on your individual social media pages and you are concerned about it, call me.
Sure.
I will help you work through it on an individual basis. These things will be extremely fact-dependent. They will depend on who said what, when, where, and how, and why.
yeah, I was mostly concerned that if we were to block someone that was harassing us, because we're not in that category, like you're saying, of people with authority can speak for the borough. If that would affect us, obviously, there's other ways to deal with it. Ignoring it basically is the best advice I would give. But I don't think we'd necessarily get tangled up, and I don't think it's really too big of a concern. I was just curious. I don't think a lot of that applies to us, basically, is what I was, as far as not being personal representatives or agents of the borough, and not, as long as we're not crossing the line where we're claiming to be, like you're saying, that would be an issue.
Well,
But
you have been
speaking-
appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the assembly. You are subject to the Code of Ethics.
Oh, yeah.
You are subject to the Open Meetings Act.
But
And you
not-
are subject to potentially somebody trying to sue you over blocking them. What you're saying is they
Really?
won't succeed. That may be
Well,
true, but,
I understand, yeah.
but that may be true, but nobody wants to go through a lawsuit. Again,
No.
if it becomes a problem, give me a call.
Okay.
We'll talk through it. We'll, help you get through it.
Well,
So, you should be having your discussions here anyway. Shouldn't be
Again-
having a lot of discussions online about any of this stuff.
Again-
And if somebody starts, again, harassing you or pinging you and they're making weird comments and stuff like that, give me a call. We'll talk through it.
Okay, that's fair. That's all I have.
This Open Meetings Act video, where's that at?
I'm sorry?
The Opens Meeting Act video?
Yep.
You said about the video?
I can help you with that.
Where's it at?
Get in touch with I'm not exactly sure where it's posted, but I know the borough clerk's office has it.
Okay.
It was recorded. I don't know, I know our RT department worked with our borough clerks, because we actually did two. And the first one we didn't record because we wanted to make sure we were better at it, and so we recorded the second one. It's on our website somewhere. I don't know exactly where, but the borough clerk's office, who all of you have interacted with at some point or another, contact the clerk's office. They should be able to tell you exactly where it is.
We can get those links and we'll distribute it to you.
Yeah, and have, so with regards to the open meetings,
It's,
I always stop when the mayor comes up.
it's on the Teams, the whole thing is on Teams, so.
Okay. And then, when he says he'll distribute things to you, the other thing I want to let you know is, to avoid Open Meetings Act problems, and you'll hear this in the training, don't communicate with each other. If you have things you want to bring or things you want to have happen here, communicate through the staff, through either Hugh or Sarah, because they're going to be staff for your board. Again, and watch the video. We talked about this in terms of best practices, just to make sure you don't make an oops. That's all.
Can I clarify real quick? Are you saying that it'd be a concern if I was sharing information with them?
100%. You should not ever directly email this board. You should always go through them.
Well,
100% of the time.
To set up this meeting, that was required. That's why I'm asking.
From now on, 100% of the time.
That's what I'm asking.
Go
Yeah,
through.
and it was
Yeah.
CC'd, obviously.
No,
to
but
them,
you shouldn't be doing any direct communication with the board. Let
Okay.
the staff do it.
Okay, he nodded to me that
Yep.
he would
Yep.
link that. I will make sure you get it. How about
Yep.
that?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. And we'll be here for,
I have a question.
sure.
Clarification on if this committee sets the agenda. We talked about the public testimony piece being 2 minutes apiece. and that 5 or 500 people can testify, can our agenda specify an hour of public testimony? Otherwise, we could be here all night if we got a lot of people. I mean, can we set boundaries on the time limit that we are willing as a committee?
No. So none of the boards and commissions in the Matanuska-Susitna Borough have the power to set an overall time limit on the time that they hear. And the Borough Assembly likewise does not set a time limit for itself. When the room is full of people and people talk and we go till midnight or sometimes after midnight, we do. And that's just the rules. And so when the code said, our standard, by the way, is usually 3 minutes. And, you know, I don't know if you watched the debate at, when this committee was formed, it was actually an amendment on the floor to allow the public testimony. There was concern by the Assembly over that, but where they settled was 2 minutes per person. But unless the Borough Assembly were to amend the ordinance and say, and a limit of, or the board can set an overall limit, which they did not do. But they don't do that for any board or commission. No board or commission has that, and you just have to.
But they specifically
Spend
told
time.
us also, if it has to take multiple meetings, then that's the case, so. I don't think that's a problem necessarily, so we're in good shape.
Okay, we'll be here for questions if you have more.
All right, thank you. All right. We have a list of persons to be heard, and as we were just clarifying, 2 minutes per person. I think we're okay. You can go the full. I was concerned if we had longer commentaries. I think we're okay. I mean, you can. Yeah. You can do it. Go ahead. If we had 500 people, I would recommend if you can keep your points succinct and not repeat what other people have said, but we have enough people where you can take your full minutes and we'll just enjoy it. And so, Mary Robinson, if you would come.
Good evening. My name is Mary Robinson. I'm a borough resident and I represent myself. So, for my 2 minutes, what I would like to say is that libraries are for everyone and a primary example of intellectual freedom. There are no obscene books in any libraries. The difference between intellectual freedom and censorship should be obvious to most people, but perhaps this committee will be able to help some of us understand where you're going with this. I am interested to see the library material review scorecard. Is the material factually accurate? So for instance, it's perfectly normal, keeps being brought up for consideration, and it is factually accurate. So I presume that we won't see it taken off the shelves. And I'm jumping all over the place here because I wasn't going to come to the meeting, but I decided to at the last minute. So Matsu Borough Ordinance 24-039, modeling the Matsu Borough LCAC after the Matsu Borough School District LCAC. The Borough School District has 3 ongoing lawsuits. So congratulations, you've opened yourself to lawsuits with this. If you followed the library collection development policy, there would be no need for this committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you, Mary. Kathy Kaiser.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Kaiser. I'm an English professor and president of the Friends of the Sutton Library. In the Apostle Paul's letter to Timothy, he states that God has not given us a spirit of fear. So if you feel fear, that fear is not coming from God. He also says that we've been gifted with a sound mind that we can use to make good decisions based on facts and data that God has given us and made evident to his creation. What are the book banners afraid of? They're afraid of readers, especially young readers, learning the truth about humans, about American history, about perhaps their own lives. What would I do if my daughters were still in their early teens and I found them reading Red Hood or Identical? I would talk to them about it, ask them what made them choose that book and how it made them feel. I would rather open the conversation than shut it down. We all know that by their late teens, our children are going to be surrounded by temptations, not only drugs, booze, and sex, but also bullying, racism, and sexism. Better to recognize these sources of fear and anger in our society in an open way rather than in a secret way. Not all teens have enough money to buy a book that has been banned from the public library. What book banners refuse to acknowledge is that reading books is a process of development. In a novel, every bit of shocking material has to be surrounded by personality, setting, character development, contrasting events, and points of view. Eventually, what is going on in the book morphs into a larger picture that puts the shocking parts into context. It is important for our children to learn the truth about human nature when they are young. Many of them can't be protected by circumstances, and the more they know and understand, the better they can handle what happens to them and their loved ones, and the better they can empathize and sympathize with the people they know who have been damaged or traumatized. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Jackie, go forth.
My name is Jackie Goforth. 16 months ago, I found out librarians were porn purveyors. Only when it's in a book, it's called obscenity, and it's illegal. The books I speak of have subliminal messaging. They seem to have one purpose: the destruction of life and life's joys. They sexualize children, they groom them for pedophilia. Along with the entire entertainment industry, these books are meant to encourage young minds to hate. Hate God, parents, babies, the law, the USA and everything it stands for. These books encourage children to hate their own bodies to the point they chemically castrate them and then cut things off, leading to a 12 times higher suicide rate. I have spent 16 months addressing people filled with hatred, and especially they hate parents' rights. I was just told by one adherent that parents will lose their rights if their child goes to public school. When they're cornered with obscenity, they actually spew garbage. Parents sign a library application that says they're responsible for what the child checks out. It's not a librarian's fault if it's obscene. No one addresses how that parent is supposed to know the level of filth in a book or that it's hidden between the covers. The determination is now in your hands. What decides a book's obscenity is based on community standards. It always was. Defenders of these books have already lost at the Supreme Court. It's called U.S. versus American Library Association, 2003. I'm not going to speak to any of these books on this list today. I believe the evidence is in the books. And I have news for everyone listening. I was personally involved in 12 of the 13 books on that list. That list is the ones that say they're complete are no such thing, 5 of them. I don't trust or believe anyone involved in defending this agenda anymore. I know exactly what their word is worth. I assure you I will be getting those books back in the queue for you to evaluate. I don't care what adults do to themselves, but they went after the children and there's a line. I'm standing on it, and I'm not alone. I'm not a small group. Every community member in this valley with moral values stands beside me. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Jackie. Karen Lewis.
Good evening, my name is Karen Lewis. I'd like to thank Mayor DeVries and the members of the Borough Assembly who voted to comprise the Book Challenge Committee with members who are morally sound pertaining to what is good and healthy for all children who read library books. And thank you too. Thank you all, because this is going to be challenging. So thank you. I will never be able to comprehend the depravity of those who planned and plotted and then obtained and shelved obscene books in libraries, specifically designed for children. Borough and county libraries, city libraries, and school libraries all across our country have been inundated with this filth, and most people were unaware of this devious plan. But now we are aware, and we as a community will remove from the YA shelves these obscene and pornographic books that are designed not only to steal innocence from children, but to warp their understanding of what a loving sexual relationship actually is. Our Creator laid out parameters about what a healthy and beautiful sexual relationship looks like, but the filth written within the pages of these challenged books expose the depravity and evil intent of those who want to keep the obscene books within the reach of children in our community. And we, the people, will not allow it. Red Hood went through the school board process. 9-1, it was voted. It met the criteria for obscenity, okay? Identical, 5-2, because some of the people weren't there, met criteria for obscenity. So yeah, they're obscene. State law. I have some quotes by Thomas Jefferson. I wonder if somebody's keeping time. To compel a man to furnish funds for the propagation of ideas he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical, which is what we do with the library and these disgusting books that are in there. We should not have to pay for this filth. He also said, I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man.
Thank you, Karen.
One more. One man with courage is a majority. Yes.
All right. Is it Linda S? All right, thank you. It's a very decorative L. I wasn't sure. Thank you.
I am pro-God through the shed blood of Christ Jesus on my behalf. I am pro-life, pro-family, pro-moral, ethical community standards, pro-USA. I am a Mat-Su-Borough taxpayer. The books in our libraries should reflect educational, age-appropriate material that reflects community standards. The Mat-Su-Borough as a whole is a moral, ethical community that wants the materials placed in our borough libraries to uplift and teach children with skills, historical knowledge, and educational books to help them function in the future of our community. To push LGBTQ or DEI ideologies is dangerous for our conservative Mat-Su-Borough. Grooming children into sexual, vulgar, filthy perversion is evil beyond words. The contested books are in no way healthy for children. May God bless and protect the Mat-Su-Borough through Christ Jesus our Savior.
Thank you, Linda. Mark S.
Mark Spohn. Thank you to the Mayor DeVries and the Assembly for trying to do something and forming this committee, and to the members that are willing to serve on it. It's very important that we are very, very careful how we spend taxpayer money. And at no time should we ever cross the line of using taxpayer funds that could possibly harm children. If there's even a slight chance of it, don't use taxpayer money for this. That's not a function of taxpayer money. You got to keep that in mind, what you're using that for. And what is the most precious resource we have in this borough than children? There is nothing more precious than our children. I recently read an article in the People's Paper. They said pornography was the #1 addiction of children in the world, not just in the borough or Alaska or America, in the world. And we want to use taxpayer money to have a possibility of kids getting a hold of this? You know, when people don't know what's going on, you don't know what's going on. But once we know what's going on, be very, very careful what goes into these minds of kids. I don't know anybody that's trying to ban books. What we're telling you is taxpayer funds to purchase pornography that kids can get their hands on is not proper use of taxpayer funds. So thank all of you for giving this a try. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mary Rivetta.
Good evening. I'm Mary Ravetta. I live in Wasilla, outer border limits. I'm a marriage, family, child counselor, and I have a master's degree at a Christian university in psychology. And I understand that the books are not appropriate for the children, and it's not good to hurt their innocent minds. And I myself went through brokenness, with sexual brokenness from reading inappropriate materials. It took me 13 years. It was very, very difficult choosing a good partner that wasn't maybe someone that would go out and have affairs on myself or for myself. So it's extremely difficult to break all that addictive patterning. So I am advising this group not to be accessories to that or enabling that issue to children, and we as a community are concerned about the children, basically 14 to 17-year-olds, that they need to have the time to develop and to grow and mature. There is a Supreme Court case, Section 204, I'll try to get through it, United States versus the American Library Association, 2003, the opinion of Rehnquist, CJ, Series 201F, S Sup 2D of 420, internal quotation, marks omitted, and it's to fulfill their mission, public libraries must have board discretion to decide what materials to provide to their patrons, although they seek a wide array of information. I didn't get through it, but I think you get the point. It's already been decided on in many states. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Prudence McKinney.
Good evening, I'm Prudence McKinney. I've lived in the Matsu Valley for over 30 years. And yes, it's true, libraries should have broad discretion in providing materials to their communities. That's the libraries, not the borough, not a committee, not people in the community who don't like a book. It's the libraries who have the discretion to provide the materials, because the library staff is actually trained in choosing material, which involves removing your personal beliefs about materials and considering the needs of the, in this case, 107,000 plus people who live here. Books in and of themselves are not dangerous any more than a stove is dangerous, or a chainsaw, or a car. Yes, those things can be dangerous. We don't remove them from our children. We don't put them away where our children can't reach them. We teach our children how to use them. If you are concerned about books, teach your children. We all want our children to grow up and make good decisions. That can't happen if they don't ever have to make decisions. The idea is we teach them to make the decisions, and if they come home with something that you as a parent don't like, you talk to your child. It's not the job of the government, the borough, the library, the school district, or anybody else to tell you what to do with your stove, right? It's your job as a parent, right? Teach your child to use the tools that are available. They grow up to be productive citizens capable of making good decisions and using tools effectively. Thank you.
Thank you, Prudence. Heidi Dedman.
Most people hesitate. Hi, my name is Heidi Dedmond, and I speak only for myself. First, I'd like to thank you all for volunteering on this committee to serve your community. But unfortunately, I feel like you've been placed in a precarious position. Changing the parameters for evaluating books does not negate the constitutional rights of all people to access materials they want to read in a public library. Watering down or removing nearly 250 years of standardized library practices designed to uphold and protect those constitutional rights is a fast track to censorship. Censorship that leads to lawsuits at the expense of taxpayers. I believe the end goal in creating this committee is forcing borough taxpayers to foot a legal bill, instead of the handful of censorship advocates who want these books deemed legally obscene. The Bible says that parents are to teach, guide, and discipline their children. Anyone who has raised children knows that you can't be with them 24 hours a day. to keep them on the right path, nor can you override their free will as they age. Similarly, the Bible does not say that we should sweep sand off the beach or sanitize the world. We are to be in the world, but not of the world. The reality is that the books in your library mirror the people in your community. If you want to change the books in the library, you need to change the hearts of the people in your community. You can waste time fighting one book at a time, or you can invest that energy into discipling people, fostering or mentoring children, working to prevent human trafficking, and advocating for victims of domestic violence. And on a final note, I will encourage you, if you're at all interested, to go look up that case that's been referred to here, the Supreme Court case with the American Library Association from 2003, which is the SIPA law, which is the Children's Internet Protection Act.
Okay, thank you, Heidi. Real quick, if I could, if everyone could check your phones and make sure that they're silented. If you need help, we can find an IT person. But please, thank you. Next, Karen Crandall. Sorry, Karen, I didn't mean to embarrass you.
I don't get phone calls. Okay. So I just wanted to thank Mayor Edna for developing this plan, for having a committee to review books that are questionable in our borough libraries. Thank you for all enlisting in this task of trying to have better books. So my concern is the type of books that are available in our libraries for adolescent readers. I have been informed that parents can set up a list of books that they do not want their children to check out. I think Jackie referred to that. Unfortunately, many parents don't know that they can use that service, which is available at their local library. They need to know that. I suggest that it be made clear to parents when they're concerned about the type of book genres that their children read. I personally see that most of the books in libraries, because I've been checking them out, are not moral in character or content. Many librarians are not including Christian authors. You need to check this out. And so in their library collections, they're excluding a large majority of Christian or moral literature. So we have authors such as Francine Rivers, Brody and Brock Toney, Jeanette Oki, Ben Carson, who writes historical books. We have Karen Kingsbury, Beverly Lewis, Max Lucado, Gilbert Morris. We have Laura Ingalls Wilder, which specializes in kind of historical prairie books. We have Ralph Moody, who caters to boys. And then we have Mikkel Leonard and Lindsay Hutchinson. And we need to be concerned that our children's minds develop intellectually and with integrity. So we need to also make sure that our tax dollars are spent appropriately, not inappropriately. There needs to be consideration. If you were to go to these libraries, you would realize that there's a very limited number of Christian types of literature for our kids to read, or any that is morally upright.
All right, thank you, Karen. Is there anyone else that did not make it on the list that would like to speak? All right.
Name's Lloyd Thurman. I'm only speaking for myself. I don't appreciate the people who have taken the time to try and use Peter, Paul, and those apostles as though they would be approving of pornography and slut that would be there.
Please hold your applause.
To say that, that people are being inhibited of trying to expand their own mental capabilities, I find that a little bit also aggravating, because if you're going to say that they're inhibiting them from expanding, then it would be the government's responsibility to also provide all the drugs, all the machine guns and everything else, and that it's up to each individual to make that decision as far as whether they want to kill society and everything else. This is nonsense. It's not the position of the government nor of libraries to be able to put things that can be damaging, especially to early minds. The bottom line is we are to protect the youth and the innocents. Life is filthy enough as it is, and mankind does not normally progress, but he normally goes in a decline. And you see that all through history. Hitler was very much about trying to program the minds of people with perversions and everything else. So what is programmed into the people's minds is very critical, because what they see, what they take in through their mind, through their head, that's what they eventually become. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lloyd. Anyone else? Yes, sir. And for those coming up, could you state your name for the record?
I'm Dave Johnson. I'm here from the Valley. I represent myself. I'm a taxpayer. I don't want the money spent on books like this for children. What we're talking about is children here. That's what I've sat back here and heard so far. We don't give cigarettes to children. We don't give booze to children. We're not going to give them books like that. It's that simple. Talk about the parents' job. Well, as adults, we all need to pull the wagon. It's our responsibility to take care of the children. We don't target children. It's that simple. Take care of the children. Don't give them the opportunity to be influenced by something that could be very addictive. I wish they would have said something about cigarettes when I was a kid, and I wouldn't have smoked for 42 years. But it wasn't that way. You're at that point in your life right now where you can make a difference in these kids' life. I'd appreciate it if you would do that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. All right, last call. Anyone else? Move along. All right, our public comment period is concluded. We're going to move on into new business and take a look at the scorecard. Does everyone have a copy of the scorecard document here?
I do not have a copy.
You do not? I've got a few extra. Is it in your packet?
I guess I do have a copy.
Okay, if you could pull that out and take a look at it, we're going to go through that together. Before we get started, Hugh, is there anything you'd like to lay out concerning what you know of this scorecard that you'd like us to know? Or should I read through it first? If you have any comments or you want to insert anything, if you feel free to insert. So the evaluation criteria committee should consider the following acquisition and weeding criteria as applied to the challenge material. Is the material in good condition or appearance? Is the topic of the material a priority for the collection? Is the format of the material a priority for the collection? Has the material been used frequently by patrons? Is the material factually accurate? Has the material been superseded by a new edition or better source? Is the material relevant to the needs and interests of the community? Can the material be easily borrowed from another source? Does the material have literary, artistic, scientific, political, or educational merit? Does the material have positive reviews in one or more appropriate professional journals? Does the material have positive reviews from critics, patrons, or staff members? Are there sufficient materials available on the subject? Does the material have reputation and or significance of the author, publisher, or producer? The next section is suitability for minors under 16. These are yes or no questions. Does the material depict the following actual or simulated conduct? Sexual penetration, the lewd touching of a person's genitals, anus, or female breast, masturbation, bestiality, the lewd exhibit of a person's genitals, anus, or female breast, or sexual masochism or sadism. Second, would the average individual applying the contemporary community standards find that the material taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest in sex for persons under 16 years of age? Third, would a reasonable person find the material taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, educational, political, or scientific value for persons under 16 years of age? Note, mark yes, only if the book lacks all of them. And fourthly, does the material depict actual or simulated conduct in a way that is patently offensive to the prevailing standards in the adult community as a whole with respect to what is suitable for persons under 16 years of age? And in comments below, this may include anything related to the challenge or notes about factors contained in the above evaluation or suitability criteria. So you have comments you can add in this scorecard for the director. And then the suggested disposition. First, to keep the book where it is. Secondly, to reshelve the book to the young adult section, to reshelve the book to the adult section, or to remove the book from the library. And lastly, a category of other is provided if there is another reasonable solution to the disposition that you feel that the book should be dealt with. And then a section for comments, reasons regarding suggested disposition, if any. Any questions? Any comments? One question I have, maybe for our lawyer or possibly for Hugh. It's been mentioned in the meeting so far, if evaluating this criteria, if any of these apply, that would be reason to not remove. For instance, is the material in good condition or appearance? Should we consider that? If any of these apply, well, it's all, every other section, it doesn't qualify, but it's in good condition. Should that inform our decision of whether to maintain it or reshelve it based on the condition of the book, or are these things to keep in mind as a whole separately? Is it an all or nothing proposition, I guess is what I'm asking.
Again, Nick Sparopoulos, Borough Attorney's Office. No, these are not numbered, they're not in priority, they're not weighted. These are factors to consider. And if you look back to the book selection policy that's part of your materials here, and you look at the weeding and selection, you'll see a lot of these are factored back to that, because those are the things that we're the lawyers, right? So we go around, we look at court cases, we see what's been going on. Those are the factors that you look at. So the book might be in great condition, might be a great appearance,
or
but it might
factually
be
accurate.
factually wrong. It might have errors in an algebra book.
Or it could be factually accurate and still obscene.
Could.
That's what I'm asking. If any of these line up, it's been argued in the public that if one, like for instance, well, if it's factually accurate, whether it's good for the community, whether it's indecent or not, whether it's obscene or not, whether it's
these are not mutually exclusive.
Those are just considerations to be
Correct.
taken as a whole to determine that. I just want to clarify that for everybody, because it's been bandied about both ways, and the former committee tried to make that a basis for if any of these apply, then you have to go one way or the other. But these are just considerations.
They're considerations,
Yeah.
but again, I was a chemistry guy before I went to law school, so I tend to focus on the sciences. If you had a biology book talking about genes and biology and eye colors from the 60s, it would be wrong.
Sure.
Because it's all different now, because we've learned so much more in biology, right? You go look at medical textbooks in the 40s and the 50s, some of it still applies, some of it's wrong. Book might be in great shape, But you might look at that and say, well, that's outdated, it's not something we would want to keep. Obviously, that may never come before you, might not get a challenge book to that, but, you know, challenge book would be a challenge book, you know. So these are not mutually exclusive, they're not, oh, if you check one, you can't check the other, it's to inform your decision-making, because at the end of the day, you should be taking all these things into account.
And I just want to point out real quick, even though Einstein's theory of relativity may not be perfect and may have been improved upon since, it's still worth reading and holding in the libraries. You know, so as far as things have been improved, sometimes you can look at the history of some of these things. They're still worth looking at, even though they've been advanced and improved upon. So I appreciate you clarifying that. Ms. Dennison?
Is just our personal opinion? I mean, who, like the topic of the material priority for the collection, by whose opinion?
Yours.
Mine, these are just my opinion.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, at the end of the day, this committee is gonna vote to make a recommendation at the end, right? And what to do. And so this is to inform you getting to your ultimate decision.
And so we fill these out and then we turn them in somewhere?
Well, the ordinance actually says scorecards filled out at the meeting, so you guys can decide how you wanna work through that, that's completely up to you. Staff was very cognizant of, in working with the Community Development Department and internally with the manager's office and everything, very, you know, it's up to you, how do you want to proceed to fill these out, what you wanna do, you talk to the chair, and you can talk about that tonight, and however you wanna do it.
And is it public record when we
Yes.
fill these out?
Yes.
With our signature?
Specifically, the ordinance says they're public record.
Public record, okay. But it's our opinion, strictly, our opinion.
If I could, going back to I think the curation or the priorities of the collection, what we read earlier laid out those things as it concerns the library and their priorities. And so you want to consider that, right? So if you want to review what we went over earlier, that lays all that out of what those library priorities are, and then let that inform your opinion of how this material would fit into those goals or priorities in your opinion. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Any other questions as you go through this? I'm sure there's some of it's pretty straightforward. But if there's anything that comes up, now would be the time. But we will go through the selection process next. Last chance, any comments or questions on the scorecard itself?
Actually, I do have one for the lawyer. Thank you. The scorecard is the minimum. Are we allowed to also use law, ordinance, and other sources to determine? Or is this the only thing we have?
When you say law ordinances.
Like if there is a law, what would be considered obscene or pornographic by state or borough? Is that able to be considered into these?
Well, the suitability for minors under 16 does reflect the law in the state of Alaska, and the borough has no law, so it's there.
I would say too that you have room for comments and extra information to be added if you want to provide that for the director to be considered. You have that option also. Thank you. Moving along to the book selection process. So this may be a vote that we can take if someone would make a motion, but as far as what books and when and how to select through the process, actually, if I could, before we move on too far, because I didn't have it in my notes and we didn't go over it, Hugh, would it be possible for you to describe the review selection or the process of how they get to us?
Yes, Pastor Scott. The collection development policy has a challenged materials section to it. And the first thing that we ask that a patron does if they want to bring a book to reconsideration is to reach out to their librarian, to a librarian to discuss a particular book, and then a sit-down meeting or a Teams meeting if the person is unable to physically come to the library is scheduled, and the librarian and the patron discuss the merits of the book, both for and against. Oftentimes, that is when the process ends and the patron and the librarian come to an agreement. If they disagree on the disposition of the book at that point, they go through the porthole that's on the borough webpage, and I don't have the link in front of me because I'm monitoring the meeting on my laptop right here. But if you go to the borough webpage, go under libraries, any of the individual libraries have the link to how to object to a book, any material. Can be a book, can be a magazine, can be a DVD for that matter. And then that goes into a portal, and then you, as the chair of the committee, will be notified that there is a book pending. And then it is up to the committee, it's kind of down here a little further in the agenda. Do you select that book then to review or not? And at that point, the process could end because you choose not to review it. If you choose to review it, then just like we're seeing tonight, there's a couple of books further down that you'll decide whether to review or not review.
So is that when it would pop onto the dashboard that's online?
Yep, it's
So
on the
not
dashboard.
before that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then to kind of explain the process further, and I apologize if I'm preempting things here, then ultimately, as you read, the committee will make its determination whether to review the book or not review the book. If you decide to review the book, you'll schedule another meeting to talk about the books. In the meantime, your two have read the book. And then at that meeting, score the book, have discussion about the book, score the book, make the recommendation to the community development director. And that's the selection process. At any time, the patron can withdraw the book from the selection process. The committee would then have the ability to continue that review or not. It's ultimately up. Staff's role through this is to support the committee's decisions and deliberations and recommendations and provide that on to the community development director and answer questions or field questions and get them on to the right people to answer the question.
Okay, so if I could, I know a lot of this is really contingent on the community outreach director personally making decisions. So there's a lot of policy things that I think aren't clarified that I don't know if you can speak to. If you can't, just let me know. As far as how many books, how many contested, books an individual can put through the portal, it sounds like maybe there's been a limitation on that that's not clarified in the rules that I see, or I just want clarification of what that limit might be if an individual wanted to, oppose 500 books or not. And as far as I know, there's only these 3 books that we have. That's all that's in the portal at this time, correct? I'll just take them one at a time. Go ahead.
So to answer the first question, there is no limit to the number of materials that a patron can bring to the librarian or put into the portal to bring to the committee. Ultimately, it's up to the committee to determine whether they want to review that book. And it's also 100% up to the committee how many books they may review per period of time. I don't know what the average number of books a person on the committee might read per month, per day, per whatever, but you all will need to set that time, a reasonable time frame to give the slow readers in the group and the fast readers in the group the time to review that book and set up the meeting and make the recommendation.
But to clarify, all contested books will come to the committee as an option, whether or not we pick them up?
All books entered, all materials entered into the portal will come to the committee for consideration to review.
Sure. Thank you. Any questions concerning that so far? As far as the process of how the books get to us? I feel like there was another question I was trying to get after. Maybe it'll come to me.
The one thing I do want to mention, that portal is viewable live
Yeah.
on the Borough webpage.
I did have another question. The books that have been completed, as was mentioned in the comments earlier, are those available to be brought before again? Seeing it's a different
Yes,
committee?
they are.
Okay. So they'd have to be resubmitted through the portal?
Yep, they would have,
Or
I
could we
would-
pick them up off of that completed list if we chose?
So you asked three questions.
Sorry,
I'm
I
try-
apologize.
Yes, they can resubmit the books. We always encourage people to start the process anew, which would mean have the meeting with the librarian and then put it into the portal. But I don't see anything in the ordinance that says you couldn't select a book exclusive of if there's 14 books or 15 books in there, that says you couldn't add those books to your list of items to review. You would need to make that part of an agenda, and then we would need the time to collect the materials for you.
Okay, would we maybe need to clarify that, or you think that's pretty solid that we could select those as a committee?
So I'm not good at interpreting
Yeah.
those kind of things. We have two legal experts behind me, as well as the Honorable Mayor DeFries, who was instrumental in designing that legislation. So I would defer to them to comment if they feel the need to.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I don't, again, Nick Sparopoulos, Borough Attorney's Office, for the record. I don't understand your question. Are you asking whether the committee can decide, oh, I want to review that book, even nobody's challenged
Well,
it?
no, books that have been completed on
Right.
on the previous list before this committee began.
Right.
If we could pick them up to review, or if they'd have to be resubmitted.
They should be resubmitted.
That's pretty much what we're looking for. Thank you. And that simplifies things. I think the other question that I had, I think that answers it, because we want it to go through that portal from the community. Mr. Lawyer, the committee members probably should not be part of that process, submitting books for review.
Well, if a committee member
They'd have to
submits a book for review, you'd have to recuse yourself.
I want to clarify that. Yeah.
So under the ethics code, you can't take official action for anything that you're personally involved in. So anybody for example, if you were on the platting board and you wanted to do a subdivision, you couldn't vote on your own subdivision. If you were going to the tax assessment appeal because you didn't like what the assessor did, you couldn't vote on your own appeal. If you were a road contractor, right? So yes, you never give up your First Amendment rights to participate in your government, though. So if you really felt compelled to, you could challenge a book. You just could not then sit and review.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Any questions?
How will we know that something that is submitted to the portal is something that's been discussed with the librarian already?
Well, that's the process of how it gets to us, presumably, but go ahead.
I have very open communication with the borough librarians, and they let me know that, hey, we've got I'm meeting with this patron about this book on this date. And then after that meeting, they'll send me an email notification of, I met with this person about this book, and we agreed on this, we disagreed on that, and then we would look for that book to be put into the porthole. And there's a series of questions in there, and one of the questions I think is, did you meet with the librarian ahead of time? So we would always fact check the information in there.
Okay.
So is there documentation of that might be provided to the committee? Because I think the librarian's input might be helpful if we could get part of that description that maybe you get.
So I guess a question for the board is, we can certainly provide you the information about the meeting. Do you want it only when it's going forward, or would you like the information if the patron and the librarian agree that it should, if there was one of the books was going to be pulled for weeding anyway, and we pulled it through the weeding process, and it just happened to coincide with the patron raising a concern about the book. Do you want to know everything or just the ones that are coming your way?
Sure. Someone else can speak to it. I personally would say to the librarian's discretion, if there's a comment that they would like to make in the application process that they feel would be relevant for us to be aware of, I think that would be helpful. I think the rest of it we can sort through as far as, unless there's, I mean, I'm sure it'll come out otherwise, but I think the opinion of the librarian should be included in the process if possible. Does anyone have an issue with that or would like to amend that or correct that somehow, or any other provision? But I want to give that opportunity. Obviously, a record of the conversation is probably too much to ask.
So one of the things that you will all be getting when you choose your book material, you'll get the book, and staff will provide you a staff report of how the book was picked, so on and so forth, and the meeting with the librarian and the patron would also be part of that staff report. So it's already going to happen as part of the staff report if you select the book. If you want it on books that you don't select, that's...
I see what you're saying. Yeah, for the selected books, certainly.
Yeah, and you'll absolutely get that as part of the staff report.
So you're saying that librarian's comments would already be included in that packet?
It will be in the staff report on
Perfect.
each book. Once you choose your books tonight, assuming you're going to choose a book, we as staff will develop a staff report on that, including the information from the librarians.
Okay, any questions about that? All right.
I do have a question. Will the staff report include how many books are on the shelves and at what libraries and how often they're checked out?
I caught part of your question and didn't catch the second.
Will the staff report, say we choose a book, will it tell us how many book copies are out there, what libraries have them, and how often they're checked out?
We can provide you with the places that have the books on the shelf or should have the books on the shelf unless they're already checked out. And we can provide you the circulation as well of that particular material, whether it's, again, DVD, book, other materials that are available.
Was that already included in the packet, like we were
That'll
describing?
be part of the staff report,
I kind of
yep.
assumed so, okay. Anyone else? Okay, so moving on to meeting frequency in our new business, this is a discussion that we can certainly have. The ordinance requires us to meet at least quarterly or monthly as we choose as a committee or as called by the chair. We will go through a process and maybe we have this out of order, but is there any discussion on how frequently this committee should meet?
I'm ready for once a month, getting started, so we can get going.
All right, any other comments, suggestions, concerns?
I would agree to once a month. We have to read the material.
Anyone else? Anyone like to, go ahead.
I agree, once a month would be good.
Would anyone like to make a motion so we can make it official?
I make a motion to meet monthly.
I second, Dorothy Dennison.
All right, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Same sign. All right, no opposition. We're going to call it monthly. For now, at least, we can amend that at any time, depending on the frequency of requests, and revisit that. But that seems reasonable. As far as materials submitted for reconsideration, we have 3 books available in the queue. The first one is Identical by Ellen Hopkins. You see the serial number there. This book is available by staff. Did you have? Yes.
Sorry, I often feel like the clerk is standing behind my shoulder, even though there's no clerk here tonight from the clerk's office. If you're going to set monthly meetings, I would encourage you to either pick a day, a week, second Monday, third Monday, whatever,
Yeah.
Tuesday, Friday, whatever, or pick a day for at least next month. You could say, every month we meet, we'll set our next month's meeting, or set them all, because I don't want you to walk out of here tonight and not have a meeting scheduled.
Sure, thank you. And that's on
So
our list.
Before you move on, if you want to maybe talk about, that way Hugh can communicate with the clerk's office, it could get properly advertised, because if it's not advertised, the clerk and I will both be here telling you, you can't have your meeting.
It is on our agenda to do that after materials submitted.
Oh, you can, okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
so, and I'm not trying to, and just to clarify, we do have approved the first Monday of the month through the staff as available, and so we'll have to confirm that, but that was.
Where are you going to hold them?
I think it's the intention of the community development director, based on the size of folks interested in this issue, that we hold them here.
I believe the planning commission meets the first and third Monday of the month. So-
It's the second Monday.
Oh, the second, planning commission,
Yeah.
second Monday?
No, we're the second
Oh,
Monday.
the second. I thought you said first.
I might have misspoke,
I
but
thought you said
but we
first.
do have the second Monday. Yeah, sorry for that.
Just making sure.
Okay, so we are approved for that. We probably need to clarify that, and we'll have to vote on that. And I guess within going back to the meeting frequency, if we could, scheduling for that second Monday, approving that. Does anyone have any issues? Obviously, we've gone through this before. The second Monday monthly, that's approvable by everybody? Any comments, questions, complaints? Okay. So back to the materials submitted for reconsideration. First on the list that we'll decide either to take up or not would be the book Identical by Ellen Hopkins, which I believe is available to us today to take home and peruse over the month, come back the second Monday of next month to make a determination on our scorecard. Any discussion or comments on the book Identical by Ellen Hopkins?
That book is about 900 pages long. I say we only choose one book.
Anyone else? We can bring that up as well. As far as how many books per month, I think a lot of us, at least I feel, I agree, one book a month is sufficient, is fair. We could choose otherwise if other books come up that are, different in scope or size. But does anyone have an issue with taking up one book a month for now? Any comments, discussion on that? Okay, so we can, by unanimous consent, assume that we're going one book per month, and now we're discussing to take up the book Identical by Ellen Hopkins. Does anyone have any questions, comments concerning the particular book, whether or not we should take it up for this month to make determination on the second Monday of next month? Any comments, questions, concerns? All right. We can put it to a vote. All in favor of taking up Identical by Ellen Hopkins, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Aaron? Nate? So we'll open up for discussion if you want to make a comment. We can. It's up for debate.
I say, maybe we could have a different book that's, if we're gonna do one a month, maybe the second book would be a better choice.
Could you clarify the concern? Is would we need more than a month for Identity or less?
Oh, that's just afternoon reading. I get 900 pages. That's not a problem.
Okay. Is Red Hood significantly larger? Is Red Hood significantly longer? Yeah, I thought identical looked thicker to me. So identical would be the larger of the two. So,
Sure.
so we're okay with that.
Yeah.
We're good with so you would take back your opposition and you're okay with
Yeah, I'll
going?
take back on.
Okay, I just want to clarify. So one more time, we're all in agreement, we're taking up identical question? For next month. We will take it home today, read it this month, come back with a determination, fill out our scorecard in the meeting next month. And we probably need to clarify that better, even though we don't have a space for it in the agenda, of the process of filling out that scorecard. I don't know how much we need to define that process, but how we go about that and how much time we give to filling that out and presenting our points, we can talk about in a moment. But just to clear this out, this identical will be the book we take up for this month to come back next month to determine. It's 900 pages. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Is that a concern?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes.
Identical isn't a chapter and verse type book.
It's written in verse.
I said, identical is not a chapter and verse type book that you, or a novel. It is it's a collection of poems. So, if I can hold this up for the,
Sure.
this is an average, what the pages look like. So even though it's a daunting 900 pages, it's not very word heavy per page. Here's another page just for, you see, just a couple. So, however the board makes its decision.
Sure.
It's not like War and Peace. It's
Thank you for that. Any other concerns? I appreciate that, though. I mean, that's definitely helpful. Everyone in agreement? Any opposition? All right, so we will inform the staff of that, and we'll send you home with those today. I don't think we need to make any other determinations as far as books till next month. Real quick, before we move on, while we're in new business, I would like to open up a discussion of how we would like to work through the scorecard when we come back and meet. So, have any of you seen the process at the school board or the review that they're doing?
I think that we need to be able to have thoughtful time when we're looking at the book, making our notes, and filling out our individual scorecards, and then maybe we determine how we each discuss our score, and then how they all get tallied. That part I'm not sure, but I'm not gonna come here the night of and try to figure out what I wanna say. I'm already gonna have it figured out from my evaluation.
But as far as how we process that, sharing our information, how should we structure that discussion individually? How much time should each person have, and in what order? Because first we'll discuss the book, maybe discuss what we concluded in different steps, right? So, what we thought about it, because we want to be able to inform each other before we fill out the card, in case, for instance, if someone else were to read something that might inform or how you fill out the card. So prior to filling out the card, I'm just wondering, we can discuss a discussion of the book, go through a process of filling out the scorecard live, which is what's recommended by the process. We fill it out here, and then make that determination of what, how we scored it, or come to the conclusion at the final page of how to deal with it. So that's what I would recommend, somehow structuring that. Are there any questions, comments?
I look at this as we go through it and you answer the questions. It's yes or no, or you go through it yourself. I don't know why we need to do that as a group until we're going over it as a group.
I might have
Does
misread
that make sense? And then you come ready with your answers,
Did
We're
the
not all of
ordinance
one mind.
inf-
We may have different ideas about,
Did the ordinance, anyone know, inform us to fill it out here? I thought I might have read that. I could be way off.
I believe the ordinance says that the book will be scored at a public meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting. So again, having your determination, I understand, knowing what you're gonna do. All I'm asking, because the potential for having a discussion may potentially alter that in real time, that we have an opportunity to discuss and then fill out our scorecard. Otherwise, we could amend it and then make that final determination and then vote. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that's what we have to do. I'm offering that as a process. We, as a committee, can decide if we want to just come in, fill it out, and vote. But I'm asking for input of how we would like, as a committee, that process to go, I guess. Because we have a lot of leeway as far as how we want to operate, how we want to share information, how we want to discuss with each other. And I would recommend some kind of time limit, right? 5 minutes, who knows, whatever we can decide on. Because we can easily, and I want us to be conversational, right, about a book, but that could easily go out of control. So I would recommend some kind of limitations to the process so that it's efficient and streamlined and we can predict it. And then any input in that I'm open to, but we have to pretty much create a wheel of how we're going to operate.
Is it possible, though, for us to take notes at home before we come here to fill it out, so we kind of know what we are going to do individually when we get here? Is that permissible?
I think you can use the score sheet as your personal template.
Okay.
And then, not speaking for the chair, you'll have your opportunity to convey your notes
To the scorecard?
through of your scorecard to the body as a whole, and then the body as a whole would, I'm guessing, Pastor or Chairman, would evaluate each individual member's input and then ultimately make a recommendation.
Thank you.
I think I can simplify it. It's six of one, half a dozen of another. If we come in with it ready to go, we know what we're going to do. We will still have an opportunity to amend that scorecard before we turn it in, based on the discussion before we vote. That's really all I'm trying to lay out. How you formulate that and how you come to that conclusion is up to you, but we will have time as we fill it out, the actual scorecard here, and then make that vote as a committee. All I'm saying is once we have a discussion, you can still amend it before you turn it in. If for some reason your opinion changes or new information comes to light through discussion, you can change the notes on your scorecard before turning it in, before making your final vote. That's all I'm trying to get after, is that we have that opportunity through discussion to inform that scorecard.
I feel like looking at some of these questions, that some of the staff report that we should be getting might answer some of these questions, how frequently it's been being used. So some of these questions, hopefully, we're going to have when we get a staff report on the book in question. And then other ones are going to be, as we go through it and we're looking through the materials, we're going to see, what criteria is met as we read it. But looking at some of these questions, I think hopefully some of this we're not going to know intuitively. We're going to have to rely on a staff report or get the information ahead of time unless they're prepared to answer some of these questions for us. We may not know.
Sure. And then how we weight that individually, how we determine how that affects the overall, judgment is something that we have to deal with. But yeah, I think you're right. That will fill in the gaps of answering the questions once we have that report. Any other questions, comments, discussion? I know we can simplify this maybe by, let's do it this way. Does anyone like to make a motion on limiting debate or conversation in the initial phase of the book review? When we come back together and we discuss the book individually, make comments, does anyone interested in making a limitation, or do we want to leave it open-ended? I'll leave that for you to decide. If someone wants to make a motion, we can make a policy, basically, how we want as a group to move forward, unless the lawyer has a different idea.
Again, I've got the ghost of the clerk behind me. That's a motion. That motion would be proper at your next meeting. Because once this meeting adjourns, because you're not really coming up with rules of procedure and all that stuff. So if you want to talk next meeting, at the beginning of the meeting, like, hey,
Okay.
how do we want to structure our discussion?
I was under the impression that that's something we had to lay out for
No, you can
going
go-
forward.
It's up to you. It really is up to you.
Meeting by meeting, we can
Meeting by
alter it,
meeting, yeah.
obviously.
You can say, hey, we need a lot of discussion, we don't need a little bit of
Okay.
discussion, because you don't know what you're in for.
Sure.
And I apologize for jumping up.
No, you're fine.
This is new for everybody, including us. So
Yeah.
we're just trying to help you, get to the best mousetrap we can here.
Yeah.
But my recommendation is take it up at the beginning of the meeting, because some people might want to talk a lot, and some people might go, yeah, I don't have anything to say, so we could set 20-minute time limit, I don't care, mine's gonna be 0.
Sure. That's fair. It's just something we should be considering, thinking through when we determine it and how we decide. That'll be up to us. And of course, like you said, meeting by meeting, we can evaluate that. So we have flexibility. It's just nice to have a format, to have, an outline that we can follow once we establish what we want to do. But that works for me. I don't believe we have any other new business, so we will pick up a discussion. We really did, but we'll solidify it as far as our next meeting.
Do you need a motion for the next meeting?
I believe that we've established the second Monday by unanimous consent, but if there's a concern.
So that would be August 12th at 5 o'clock?
That is correct.
Can I put that in my calendar then?
You can, but again, once it goes through the clerk and through the staff, they'll confirm that for us, and we'll get emails concerning that. You can put it tentatively, I'm sure, in your calendar. But as long as there's no issues or concerns of that date, then we will, by unanimous consent, determine the second Monday of next month, August 12th, our next meeting. And we will open up for member and staff comments in closing. We'll start with Aaron and work our way through. If anyone wants to just make a comment, or this is your opportunity to share anything you deem relevant to the committee.
I have no further questions.
Any comments?
I just had one comment on the scorecard, and that is the first criteria is the material in good condition or appearance. We're not going to know that because there might be 8 copies or 10 copies in the library system, and I don't think that should inform our decision in any way.
I imagine, Hugh can correct me, if that was the reason a book was coming to us to be removed, that it would be part of the report, or if it was a tattered book, that somehow that would be in the report?
We will provide you a staff report of all of the questions that sort of pertain to our staff on there.
Okay.
Because the scorecards have already been developed, I don't think altering them at this point is the best thing to do. So we'll address it if just for everyone's benefit, we don't keep very many dog-eared, tattered books on the shelf.
Yeah.
We replace them if they're well-loved, we replace them as need be. So,
I think that's the confusion of why it's on the list, but, yeah.
I will only say that we generally have our books in good order, and we will answer the question directly as it is on the scorecards.
Okay. And I would maybe say also, as far as appearance, I'm just guessing, if there was a pornographic image on the cover of the book, maybe that would inform that comment as well. But as far as condition, you're right, we wouldn't know unless it was in that report. So we'll have to rely on them.
Well, the borough's giving you a copy to read. You're not getting a library copy.
No, I understand, but if the book in question is in poor condition in the library, I assume that they would inform us of that. We have to rely on that report, is all I'm saying. Is that fair, Hugh?
It is, and as Mr. Spiropoulos said, this is the first time we're doing this, and we might have to make slight changes along the way to better facilitate the board's process. If that particular criteria is not one that the board feels is valid, then at your next meeting, maybe bring that up. But given that the criteria is placed out today, you've got it, we're gonna give you the books. Maybe that's a conversation for next time. Not getting poked in the back by anything sharp from the attorney, so I think that's a yes.
Good. All right. Comments? Ms. Dennison? Anybody? No? No comments? Any final comments?
Well, personally, I find this very fascinating, and this is going to be an adventure. I'm a writer. I enjoy writing. I enjoy reading other writing. But this will be an adventure, and I think we should all look at it this way and see what we come up with.
All right, thank you. Any other comments as we're closing? Open, going once? For the committee, sorry. Closing comments for the committee. Staff, any comments? I just want to thank everybody for coming. I really do appreciate everyone that spoke out in pro or against the process or anything that we're doing here. I think the communication is most important. I don't necessarily look forward to reading the material, but being conversational and talking through, I think, is going to be important. And like she said, an adventure. But I appreciate everyone here serving, staff included, for the willingness to go through this process with us and determine as a community, as a people, what's appropriate, and we'll move forward. And with that, I'll close the meeting. Adjournment. That's adjournment. Yeah. All in favor of adjourning the meeting at 7:07? Any opposition? Thank you very much. We got pretty close to time. We were a little bit behind and got to 7 o'clock. I think we all did pretty well. I appreciate the time and effort. Thank you, guys.
Prior to the board leaving the room, I